Tobacco, a plant with a rich and controversial history, has been used and cultivated for thousands of years. This journey will take us to the ancient civilizations that first discovered its properties, to indigenous peoples who use it as medicine, and into modern times, where tobacco is both a source of pleasure and a concern for public health. Let's discover how a plant became central in spiritual rituals, medical practices, and, eventually, a global industry, with roots that extend from the Americas to the elegant salons of Europe. The history of tobacco is a complex web of cultural traditions, economic achievements, and health challenges. From its sacred role in the hands of indigenous healers to its transformation into a mass consumer product, tobacco has influenced economies, societies, and the health of millions of people throughout the centuries. The fascinating trajectory of tobacco includes its use in purification and healing rituals, its acceptance and popularization among Europeans, and its economic impact in the American colonies. Throughout this journey, we will see how this plant transitioned from a spiritual medicine to one of the most controversial and debated products of modern history, reflecting cultural and scientific changes over the centuries. This documentary will explore these multiple dimensions, revealing the complexity and controversies of a plant that, despite everything, continues to be an important part of human life, and, at its core, is a medicine for us. In this video, you will transform your vision and learn how to consecrate it correctly. So, get the popcorn ready and hold on tight, because today the exploration is deep. The use of tobacco dates back thousands of years, with archaeological evidence indicating that civilizations in Central America and South America cultivated and used this plant. Peoples such as the Maya and the Aztecs incorporated tobacco into their religious rituals, using it in ceremonies to connect with the divine. These cultures believed that tobacco had spiritual properties, capable of carrying prayers to the gods. In addition to its spiritual role, tobacco was used medicinally by these civilizations, sometimes chewed, sometimes in the form of a poultice, and sometimes also smoked. The various uses made it a very important practice in the medical and religious practices of these cultures. Records show that tobacco was cultivated with great care and respect, seen as a sacred gift that should be treated with reverence. The priests, healers, and spiritual leaders were primarily responsible for the spiritual use of tobacco, ensuring that its properties were utilized in an appropriate and respectful manner. The cultivation and use of tobacco were immersed in rituals that celebrated nature and spirituality. These ancient practices reflect an understanding of tobacco as more than just a simple plant. For the Maya and Aztecs, tobacco was a direct connection to the spiritual world, a vital tool for physical and emotional healing. This spiritual and medicinal legacy still resonates in some contemporary indigenous cultures, where respect for the plant remains a fundamental part of their traditions. Before the arrival of the Europeans, tobacco already played a significant role in the indigenous cultures of the Americas. Pre-Columbian peoples not only used tobacco in rituals, but also as a medicinal tool. In many tribes, tobacco was seen as a symbol of peace and was often used in ceremonies to seal agreements and pacts. Furthermore, they believed that tobacco had healing properties and was used to treat various ailments. The traditions of tobacco use varied among the tribes, but a common theme was the deep respect for the plant. Tobacco was seen as a sacred gift from the gods and was surrounded by spiritual meanings, with important ceremonies such as purification, healing, and protection. It often involved tobacco to invoke the help of spirits and ensure the well-being of the community. Medically, tobacco was used in various ways. The leaves were chewed to relieve toothaches, applied to wounds to speed up healing, and smoked to alleviate symptoms of respiratory illnesses. These practices reflected a holistic view of medicine, where tobacco served both the body and the spirit. The spread of tobacco among the different tribes of pre-Columbian Americas also illustrates how the plant was valued and shared. The trade routes allowed tobacco to spread, along with the practices and knowledge of its use. This cultural interconnection helped to solidify tobacco as a plant of great spiritual and medicinal importance. The Guaranis, one of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, have a deep and reverent relationship with tobacco. The patingua, which is the pipe in their language, consists of peti, meaning tobacco, and gua, meaning the bowl. For them, this medicine is both a medicine of silence and a medicine of sharing. While you are consecrating the patingua, you are in silence, and the smoke can be used for purification and for communication with the spirit world. That is why, in the work of shamans, he often consecrates the patingua and blows that smoke on various parts of his own body, and even on the person he is attending to, remembering that the Guarani make it clear that one should not inhale the smoke of the patingua, because by doing so, you are taking in all the spirit of the tobacco, and all the cleansing that should come out goes back in. Through the breath of the smoke from the patingua, you cleanse your mind, body, and spirit, bringing it to the top of your head to clear your thoughts. During the consecration, you remain in silence. But this act is a conversation with the spirit of tobacco and with the Great Spirit. For the Guarani, every time you blow out the smoke of tobacco, it is as if it were a prayer. That is why silence is important, so that you can also quiet your mind and be centered in your prayer. And every time something important is going to be shared, or a prayer, like the water prayer, for example, that I do here on the channel, the shamans usually consecrate the patingua beforehand to clear the thoughts and connect with the energy of the heart. It is common, during the consecration of tobacco, for us to salivate a lot. The teaching I received about this is that we should not swallow this saliva, because it represents the physical act of cleansing our words. So, whether it's complaints or words of ignorance, tobacco cleanses and brings all of that out. And when it's time to draw it into your mouth, you should pull the smoke from the heart to the mouth to strengthen the connection between the mouth and the heart and in the words that may come from them. The Guarani also use the plant in various medicinal ways, as we have already mentioned in this video. But one practice that a Guarani told me is that, after using the patingua several times, a paste begins to form at the connection between the bowl and the mouthpiece. If you still don't understand what I'm talking about, it's this right here. This is the filter tip, and this is the small bowl. They take this paste and use it in case you have some kind of maggot infestation, applying it to the area to remove them and clean the wound. It is common for each Brazilian indigenous ethnicity to have a medicine with which they identify more. And tobacco is the medicine that the Guarani have delved into the most, just as churu is for the Huni. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, in this video I explain everything I learned from the Huni about churu, that is, cannabis. It will be in the card up here, about what I'm talking about. But how did tobacco come to the indigenous people? According to the tradition of the Lakota Indians, it was a female calf of the white buffalo that brought the sacred pipe to her people and taught them how to pray. The bowl of the pipe was the receptacle for tobacco, an herb that contains as much feminine energy as it does masculine. The haste of the pipe represented a male penetrating the female to deposit the seed of life in her. It was in this fusion between the masculine and feminine principles that the connection with the divine energy of the Great Spirit was realized. As the bowl of the pipe received the tobacco, all the families of nature were invoked to enter the pipe and share their powers. As prayers and songs of praise ascended to the heavens, the smoke was considered a very sacred and purifying visual prayer. All animals are sacred, but in many traditions, the white buffalo is the most sacred, as its appearance is a sign that prayers have been answered, that the sacred pipe has been praised. All promises and prophecies have been fulfilled. That is why the white buffalo heralds a time of fullness and abundance for all. The white buffalo was the greatest source of sustenance for Native Americans. It provided meat for food, hides for clothing and warmth during the long winters, bones for making various tools, and hooves from which an adhesive substance was produced that was used as glue. To smoke the sacred pipe with faith to give thanks for all the riches that life has granted us, and to share it with all brothers of all races and all nations, as well as all creatures in the different biomes of life on Earth. It also means smoking the sacred pipe to help others, asking for their wishes to be fulfilled, praying for harmony, to reign everywhere, and knowing how to accept the great mystery as an integral part of that harmony. But with the arrival of Christopher Columbus and other Europeans in the Americas, tobacco was quickly discovered and brought back to Europe. Initially received with curiosity and skepticism, tobacco soon became an exotic and valuable commodity. Its popularity grew rapidly, being adopted by the nobility and spread throughout the European continent, marking the beginning of a new era for this plant. The accounts of European explorers regarding the use of tobacco by indigenous peoples sparked great interest. They wrote about how tobacco was used in religious ceremonies and how its properties were valued. This curiosity led to the experimental cultivation of tobacco in botanical gardens and, eventually, to the development of a tobacco industry in Europe. Tobacco soon became a symbol of status and sophistication, with the nobility of Europe adopting the habit of smoking. The exotic plant was considered a luxury, and the act of smoking became a socially valued activity. This growing demand led to the expansion of tobacco cultivation in the colonies, establishing a transatlantic economy based on the plant. The spread of tobacco by European explorers brought profound economic and cultural changes. As this plant spread throughout Europe, trade routes were also established that connected the Old World with the New World. This exchange not only popularized tobacco, but also transformed the plant into a global product. In the 17th century, tobacco became one of the most important cash crops in the American colonies. Both in North America and South America, tobacco was used as a medium of exchange, essential for trade. In some regions, it was so valuable that it was used to pay taxes, debts, and to acquire land and even slaves. This period solidified tobacco as a global commodity. The economies of the colonies, especially in Virginia, heavily depended on tobacco cultivation. Tobacco planters amassed fortunes, and the plant became a pillar of the colonial economy. The growing demand in Europe drove the expansion of plantations, which in turn increased the need for labor, resulting in the intensification of the use of slave labor. Tobacco was used to trade a variety of goods and services. In addition to being a form of payment, it was also used to trade for clothing, food, and other necessities. The use of tobacco as a medium of exchange illustrates the economic importance of this plant and how it facilitated the development of the colonies by providing a stable economic foundation. However, this economic system also had profound social implications. The wealth generated by tobacco cultivation led to the emergence of a class of wealthy planters who wielded significant political and social influence in the colonies. However, this economic prosperity was intrinsically linked to suffering, whose labor was essential for the large-scale production of tobacco. During the 17th century, the habit of smoking tobacco evolved and spread across social classes. Smoking clubs emerged in Europe, where the elite gathered to socialize and enjoy pipes and cigars. Tobacco began to be seen as a symbol of status and sophistication. At the same time, tobacco production continued to grow, with plantations spreading across the colonies, fueling a prosperous economy. The culture of smoking became an integral part of social life at the time. Smoking clubs were places where people could discuss politics, philosophies, and other important topics. These clubs played a crucial role in the dissemination of Enlightenment ideas, providing an ideal space for intellectual debate and the exchange of ideas. Tobacco also found its place in literature and the arts. Poets and writers often mention tobacco in their works, highlighting its fundamental role in the everyday and cultural life of the time. Tobacco has become a symbol of introspection and contemplation, often associated with the figure of artists and intellectuals. This growing popularity led to an increase in production in the colonies. Tobacco plantations expanded, driving the colonial economy and fueling European demand. However, this expansion also had environmental consequences, with vast areas of forest being cleared to make way for plantations. The tobacco culture of the 17th century reflected both the social and intellectual advancements as well as the environmental and economic challenges of the time. The economic impact of tobacco also influenced colonial politics, especially in American colonies like Virginia and the Carolinas, where tobacco became the backbone of the economy. The elite of tobacco planters wielded significant influence over political decisions. This economic and political power helped to solidify the system of slavery, perpetuate social inequalities, creating a deeply divided society. However, with the arrival of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, tobacco production underwent a significant transformation. Before industrialization, tobacco was harvested and prepared by hand in a laborious and time-consuming process. The first cigarette rolling machine was patented in 1880 by James Bonsack, marking the beginning of a new era for the tobacco industry. This resulted in an exponential increase in tobacco consumption. Cigarette factories proliferated, and large tobacco companies began to dominate the market. Companies like the American Tobacco Company became industrial giants, employing thousands of workers and generating enormous profits. Mass production also allowed these companies to invest heavily in advertising, promoting their products and further increasing tobacco consumption. The Industrial Revolution not only transformed tobacco production, but also had a profound impact on society. The availability and popularity of cigarettes have shaped consumption habits, making smoking a common practice among all social classes. However, this transformation also brought with it the first signs of public health problems associated with tobacco consumption. They would be explored. Further on, in the early 20th century, advertising played a crucial role in the popularization of cigarettes. Tobacco companies invested millions in advertising campaigns that promoted smoking as a glamorous and sophisticated habit. Celebrities, athletes, and even doctors have been used in advertisements to endorse tobacco products, creating a positive and appealing image of smoking. Cigarette advertisements were ubiquitous, appearing in newspapers, magazines, billboards, and later on television. Advertising campaigns explored themes such as freedom, adventure, and sensuality, associating the act of smoking with a desirable lifestyle. Martin's strategy was extremely effective, leading to an even more significant increase in cigarette consumption. During the World Wars, cigarette consumption became even more popular among soldiers. The armed forces often included cigarettes in the soldiers' supplies, and advertising campaigns portrayed smoking as a relief from the stress of war. After the wars, many veterans continued to smoke, further consolidating the popularity of cigarettes in civilian society. However, as the 20th century progressed, evidence began to emerge regarding the harmful effects of cigarettes on public health. Scientific studies began to link smoking to serious diseases, such as lung cancer and heart disease. Despite this, advertising campaigns continued to downplay the risks and promote cigarettes, perpetuating a culture of consumption that ignored the dangers associated with tobacco use. Here we can already see the effect of a substance like the Bengala, where one seeks something solely for immediate pleasure. Unlike the indigenous peoples, white people began to inhale cigarettes and sought exactly that sensation, believing it would be the solution to their problems. So, if you are stressed, smoking will calm you down, and through this, they found not only diseases, but also the addiction itself. But what is the difference between what the indigenous people do here and what the whites have come to do? First of all, tobacco is not inhaled, and above all, it is not meant to be used all the time. The consecration of tobacco is to purify and communicate with the Great Spirit. As I mentioned before, the idea is that this purpose is carried in the heart, demonstrating respect for this medicine and, above all, respect for oneself and one's own body. In this way, it is not about the sensation, nor is the habit of using tobacco created when one is nervous. In addition to all the uses I mentioned here, indigenous people also consecrated in powder form our beloved snuff. Basically, it is a mixture of tobacco with some herbs, and this powder is blown through a tepi into both nostrils. This medicine is extremely sacred to basically all indigenous peoples here in Brazil. And if you are curious to know more about it, there is a video here on the channel that explains everything in detail about this medicine, and you can check it out. in this card. And now you might be wondering, how can I properly consecrate this medicine? First of all, it is always recommended to find pure tobacco. Indigenous people typically plant and use their own tobacco, where there is no need to prepare it on a large scale and store it for a long time. So they do not add various toxins to prolong the quality of the tobacco, like any medicine, but especially in this case. I recommend choosing a calm place for you to start consecrating the tobacco and to connect with it. Prepare the tobacco inside the fornelho and say your prayer. Set your intention. Why are you consecrating this tobacco? Talk to him. And most importantly, listen to what he has to say. It is worth mentioning again, not to inhale the tobacco. Clear your mind and focus on your heart. You will probably salivate a lot, and even some pieces of tobacco and ash will come into your mouth, as the Guaranis always teach. Spit it all out. It can be in a small bucket or even in nature itself, if you can. This way, we cleanse our words through tobacco. The amount you wish to consecrate depends on your feelings. When you feel that you are done, whether because you burned all the tobacco or because you felt that was the consecration, preferably pour the ashes into nature or into the fire itself. Always carry gratitude in your heart for the teachings of tobacco and for allowing yourself this moment. Tobacco is truly very sacred when it is consecrated, and in this way, it is a form of connection with the divine, with the Great Spirit, with God, and with yourself. Deep gratitude. Deep gratitude. If you inhale, my friend, your blood pressure will drop, so don't do that. When we rely completely on a substance as an escape from our problems, we become dependent on it, and anything in excess creates problems. So, finally in the 1920s and 1930s, some doctors began to notice the correlation between tobacco smoking and the increase in lung cancer rates. These initial studies, although limited, raised the first concerns related to tobacco use. They brought up the first concerns about the health risks associated with tobacco. In the 1950s, a series of more robust studies began to provide compelling evidence that smoking was a significant cause of various serious diseases. In 1950, the pioneering study by Richard Dahl and Austin Bradford Hill, published in the British Medical Journal, established a clear link between cigarette smoking and lung cancer. This study marked a turning point in the understanding of tobacco associated with lung cancer. The scientific findings led to a growing public awareness of the dangers of smoking. Health organizations have started launching awareness campaigns to alert the public about the risks of tobacco. However, the tobacco industry has strongly resisted funding opposing research and launching misinformation campaigns to minimize scientific findings. Despite the resistance, the accumulated scientific evidence has become impossible to ignore regarding the dangers associated with tobacco use. Post-view studies have also confirmed the risks and identified other health problems associated with smoking, such as heart disease, emphysema, and complications during pregnancy. This growing body of scientific knowledge has paved the way for future regulations and public health measures aimed at combating smoking. With the growing body of scientific evidence about the dangers of tobacco, an anti-tobacco movement has emerged dedicated to combating cigarette consumption and protecting public health. In the 1960s and 1970s, public health organizations such as the American Cancer Society and the American Heart Association began to lead aggressive campaigns against smoking. These campaigns focused on educating the public about the health risks associated with smoking. Public service announcements, educational programs, and informational materials have been widely disseminated, highlighting the dangers of smoking and encouraging people to quit smoking. The media played a crucial role, with documentaries and reports that exposed the harmful effects of smoking. At the same time, governments began to implement policies and regulations to control tobacco consumption. Advertising bans on cigarettes on television and radio, restrictions on smoking in public places, and the inclusion of health warnings on cigarette packaging were some of the measures adopted to reduce tobacco consumption. These actions were crucial in the fight against the tobacco epidemic. This anti-tobacco movement also received support from former smokers and activists who shared their stories of overcoming and recovery. These personal narratives helped to humanize the campaigns, showing the tangible benefits of quitting smoking cigarettes, and also inspiring others to do the same. The anti-tobacco movement continues to be a vital force in promoting public health and reducing the impact of tobacco on society. Starting in the 1990s, the tobacco industry faced a series of lawsuits in the United States and other countries. These processes were initiated by individuals, states, and public health organizations who claimed that tobacco companies had deceived the public about the risks of smoking and had engaged in misleading and irresponsible marketing practices. One of the most notable cases was the Master Settlement Agreement of 1998 in the United States. In this agreement, the major tobacco companies agreed to pay billions of dollars to U.S. states to cover the costs of treating smoking-related diseases and to fund anti-tobacco campaigns. The agreement also imposed strict restrictions on tobacco advertising, especially that aimed at young people. These processes revealed internal documents from tobacco companies that showed they had known about the dangers of tobacco for decades, but chose to conceal this information from the public. The revelations shocked the world and intensified efforts to regulate the tobacco industry. Tobacco companies have been forced to adopt more transparent measures and to implement more explicit health warnings on their products. As the evidence of the dangers of tobacco became undeniable, many countries began to implement regulatory measures to combat smoking. Anti-smoking laws emerged as a necessary measure to protect public health, restricting tobacco use in public places and regulating the advertising and sale of tobacco products. Countries like Ireland and Norway were pioneers in introducing comprehensive smoking bans in enclosed public places, including bars and restaurants. These measures had a significant impact on reducing smoking rates and improving public health. Other countries followed suit, adopting their own versions of anti-smoking laws, which varied in strictness and scope. In addition to smoking bans, many nations have implemented strict regulations on tobacco advertising. Cigarette advertisements have been banned from television, radio, and other media. Cigarette packaging has begun to include more explicit health warnings and shocking images of the effects of tobacco. These measures aim to reduce the appeal of tobacco, especially among young people. Tobacco taxation also became a crucial tool for reducing consumption. Significant increases in taxes on tobacco products resulted in higher prices, making smoking less accessible and less appealing. These tax policies, combined with public awareness campaigns, have proven effective in reducing smoking rates in various countries. The history of tobacco is complex and multifaceted, reflecting a journey that ranges from its sacred and medicinal use in indigenous cultures to its transformation into one of the most profitable and controversial industries in the modern world. Over the centuries, tobacco has had a profound impact on health, the economy, and global culture, influencing the lives of millions of people. The traditional practices of using tobacco as a spiritual medicine and prayer tool in indigenous cultures offer a contrasting perspective to the modern view of tobacco as a threat to public health. These traditions highlight the importance of respect and knowledge when using tobacco, and demonstrate how this plant can be a powerful ally if used with intention and reverence. When we look at tobacco as a sacred medicine, we can honor and draw out the best in it. It is important to understand that tobacco is a form of resin, a connection, a way to silence our mind and attract centering and presence. However, the challenges associated with tobacco are undeniable. Smoking remains one of the leading causes of preventable death worldwide. The fight against smoking is ongoing. Advances in regulation and public awareness have helped reduce smoking levels, but the tobacco industry still finds ways to attract new consumers, especially in developing countries. The future of tobacco depends on a balance, the preservation of cultural practices, and the implementation of effective public health measures. The history of tobacco teaches us about the impact of unchecked consumption and the need for regulation, but it also reminds us of its potential as a sacred medicine. The journey of tobacco continues, and it is up to us to shape a future that honors both health and this entire cultural heritage. May all beings benefit from these teachings. Tashi Delek. See you in the next video.